So we've got a very special guest with us today. Sergio Fernández de Córdova is a co-founder of P3GM. He's the chairman of Public Foundation, which we want to hear about. But what's really interesting is on the heels of the upcoming UN ITU summit, he's here to talk about that because you're talking about 10 presidents attending this summit. And I mean, so many global leaders attending this thing. We're going to find out, sort of about the social impact.
Would be dangerous.
I think it's going to be earth-shattering. Sergio, thanks for stopping by today. Good to have you along.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. Thank you.
Hey, listen. So first of all, I'm going to let you just go here for a minute because I don't think a lot of people understand the relationship with the United Nations and the ITU summit. So why don't we start off by talking about what the ITU summit is, and then tell us, for example, how the UN and the ITU summit work in concert together.
Well, the ITU itself, I mean, the event that's happening is 150 years of celebrating, which really is marked on May 17th, 1865 was when the International Telegraph Convention, which is, really the initiating sort of the first day of the ITU, which really bringing members to work together to connect the world. Right, and this first meeting was 150 years ago, and so today, this weekend, we're going to celebrate with some of these heads of states that are going to be there, but really with the UN in conjunction with the ITU, celebrating 150 years of really connectivity, something that really has brought our world together, has shaped humanity in ways that we've seen in the last 10 years, from Facebook to Google, and how we've connected and learned about a culture, society, and really technology has evolved, and that's all really where ITU stands, right in the middle of it. And the UN itself, obviously, as a body of 193 member states, which is also the ITU, in conjunction, really represent connectivity around the world.
So talk to us a little bit about, you talked about, I've heard, I think you just mentioned 10 presidents, 10 heads of state attending. Why is this so important for them? I mean, that is a lot of world leaders together at one place at one time.
There's been a variety of celebratory events sort of planned throughout 2015, but really this event commemorates the major milestone of 150 years of ITU history. And the reason why these guys are there is because what represents connectivity in their countries, like the President of Colombia, is really what's going to help them, evolve into the next economy. When you start to look at the future of connectivity, not just internet and connectivity throughout a community, a town or a city or a country, but we're also looking at where connectivity is taking us with the IoT, which is what Cisco's and others around the world talk about, that we're going to have over anywhere between 28 to 75 billion devices. I mean, the spread is so big because people are just guessing.
Well, but
at the end of the day, we're going to have things connected to what? So what are we connecting to? So that's really where the ITU and some of these leaders and heads of states are looking at, and they're saying, what are other people doing? What are the best practices that we can learn? And they're really focused on presenting their country. Why are they there is because they believe that this, for their own country, is going to help them sort of, evolve into the next economy.
Our guest today, Sergio Fernández de Córdova. He is the co-founder of P3GM, and he's the chairman of Public Foundation. Guys, show the website for Public Foundation for us. And you can go to p3gm.com and take a look at that. Connectivity, they say now, and I'd be interested in hearing how you say this. And Rusty, you can comment on this. Don't you think, because you've traveled to a lot of different countries, I should say, connectivity is basically a human right at this point, is it not?
Yeah, well, you'd awfully mad if you can't find the internet at your hotel or your port or wherever you are around the world.
And by the way, what about the people, Sergio, for example, who can't get online? Boy, I mean, it doesn't take long to get behind the eight ball when you don't have connectivity. In your opinion, do these world leaders and does everyone involved in the ITU summit kind of feel that connectivity is a human right?
Oh, 100%. But they feel that it's a human right as it relates that people should have access to it. Then when you look at privacy and other issues, obviously those are separate conversations that carry on into their own life, if you know what I mean. Because those, but as far as actually having the right to connectivity, I mean, I was just in Peru last night, and we were there with the presidential candidate, President Toledo, who was talking about, the ITU summit and how important it is to bring the heads of telecommunication with the heads of state together to strategize on how they are going to make investments, not just where the money is at, but where the future of society is going. So, I mean, these conversations take a lot of depth, and when you start looking at from a political perspective, president and the heads of these telecoms as well, because it's a right that political leaders feel that these guys should be funding, but they themselves look at it and say, I'm only going to invest in where the money's at.
Well, there he is, the recent Emmy Award winner.
Yeah,
it looks like
from Edmund.
John Hamm right there.
That's exactly who that was. So with respect to, because I've interviewed a number of wireless companies on the air, there are companies that are going into some of these countries and making connectivity easier. But I would assume that infrastructure has got to be one of the biggest problems that there is, and smart infrastructure is even more difficult. Comment on that for us, if you would.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing with infrastructure is that when you look at this perfect example, as I said, one of the, a current previous head of state and future running for office, talking about, President Toledo was talking about that the state themselves, they don't have the money to make the investment. So when you look at infrastructure and how we're building all this infrastructure, what a lot of the conversations at these levels are being had is saying, how do we invest in building highways and light poles and electricity poles that have connectivity through them? So we're in essence building smarter infrastructure so that we're building that highway to the future rather than, really developing towers around the community that people don't want. And connectivity today and technology allows infrastructure to actually have technology embedded through it that can carry more of this connected future. And a lot of these sort of evolving economies, as we've seen it in Asia, in every evolution, are building with the newest tech. America, as an example, really as it relates to infrastructure, we're a third world economy as it relates to infrastructure. And we have some of the oldest infrastructure in the world at this point.
Yeah, I was just driving on it today.
Yeah, here in our state, here in our country as well. Talk to us about the public-private partnerships. Is that going to be the key to this entire thing?
Well, I mean, it's when governments don't have the money, there is no bonding vehicle that sort of can bet on the future that is related on connectivity. And you look at an organization like ITU who's saying, okay, how do we look at the IoT, the Internet of Things future, and how do we create investment opportunities that bring in new money but utilize, as you know, connectivity is a spectrum, right? So it's a license by every state.
Sure.
So the aspect of connectivity, you need a license by the state in order to operate. So therefore, you need to have public and private partnerships because the public element controls the infrastructure and the rights, and the private side has the skill set and the money. And I mean, it's really one of the oldest ways that most countries have developed. But today, public-private partnerships has been known, especially in America, as you know, from Chicago and some of these other defunct deals that have been really more privatization. But when you look at something as important as connectivity, a true PPP is one of the ways that we're going to be able to bring in real dollars and evolve that multi-$100 billion, if not trillion-dollar economy.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that, and that's the most important thing about this is if we can have this come through for us. Can you imagine the business you could do with other countries? Think about that. His name, Sergio Fernández de Córdova. He is the co-founder of P3GM. He's also the chairman of the Public Foundation, talking about the ITU and the United Nations and 10 heads of state, presidents visiting us to make connectivity a reality for the rest of the world. Go visit them online at p3gm.com. Big Biz Show coming up in a minute.